Winter is covering much of the United States. We've got bitter cold Arctic air. We've got a storm system that will be departing the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states tonight. We've got a new storm in the Gulf of Mexico where we have winter storm warnings in places that normally don't ever see winter storm warnings. So we're going to go through all of that tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which you can support very easily by shopping on Amazon using our referral link at the top of the chat board. It's also on the description to this podcast. It's pretty simple. Just click on the link, search shop, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. It does not cost you 1 extra cent. So we appreciate whatever support you can give us by shopping on Amazon. Okay, so kind of interesting the way this is all played out, Joe. In terms of the forecasts, I did not, at least, yesterday when I put out my final call, it was exactly what I had for my early call. I just changed the word early to final. Okay, I didn't change anything. It looks like Long Island, New York City, coastal New Jersey is going to end up with far less than forecast by maybe a factor of 50%. The inland areas, though, are doing well in some places, and they're going to come close to numbers. And a couple of places that did really well was southeastern Pennsylvania and south central Pennsylvania into central Maryland. I mean, the State College snow amounts from about 4 hours ago, they had gotten at least 3 to 6 inches, and some of my snow removal guys that are in south central Pennsylvania say it's well past that now. But there's always a jackpot zone and there's always a screw zone, and this is how it's played out today.
Well, the one thing that I had been saying since the start is that this was, when you see systems that are closing off, so to speak, when you have an upper level low pressure system align itself with the surface system, everything slows down. It becomes what we say vertical. This was never going to become vertical. This was a wave of low pressure scooting right along an Arctic front. And Joe, right now as I speak to you, this is it as far as the most potent part of the storm is for much of the tri-state area. You can already see, and we'll show you the radar in just a few moments, back west over toward the Pennsylvania, New Jersey border, the snows are beginning to lighten up. And in fact, by the time we get to like 9 or 10 o'clock locally, that'll be it as far as significant snowfall. Now here in Putnam Valley, I've been averaging just over about a half an inch per hour. It's turned into a nice puffy type of snow, but I've only had, as of 6:15, I only had 2.6 inches. I would suppose right now, as of 7:30, I've got somewhere around 3 or 3.25 inches of snow. So we will probably reach the bottom end, at least, of my original prediction of 4 to 6. But I don't think, and I know that there were a lot of forecasts last night that were suggesting north of 287 amounts of like 7, 8 inches.
Yeah, I never went down. I did not go down that rabbit hole when I woke up this morning and saw the overnight guidance. I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm not going to bite here. And I'm glad I didn't because it didn't quite work out that way. I mean, just as I always like you to look at these things and make sure, see what I did right, see what I did wrong, and so I'm going to bring up my final call if I can find it. And as I said,
it just as I said, it was moving too fast. Now, if we had a situation where it was slowing down or even idling in neutral gear for a little while, yeah, this would have been a crippling, paralyzing storm. But the main area of FGen or Omega,
right,
roaring along at like 40, 50 miles an hour. And I mean, I don't care if you have an intense band of heavy snow. If it's not going to stay in one spot for a few hours, you ain't going to get that heavy duty.
This was never going to be an intense, crippling storm. When you look at how it evolved today, you had steady snow that broke out all to the west of the coast, and along the coast between noon and 5 o'clock, you had these little patches here and there. The coastal low getting going, but it took almost all afternoon for the radar to fill in. I mean, it really didn't fill in until 5 or 6 o'clock. Now, the inland areas, the places that were snowing moderately, and as you said, they're going to get into the bottom of your ranges. But the disjointed nature of this um, prevented it because our numbers, it's not like we were going for anything big here. We were talking about basically an inch or two at the immediate coast and, 4, 5, 6 inches tops, and my forecast, and I'm going to bring it up, um, my final call, and again, it was the same as the early call. I didn't change a thing. Now, clearly, the 4 inch line needed to be about uh, maybe 30 or 40 miles northwest. And it was definitely worked out well in Northeast Virginia, in Maryland, in South Central, most of all of Eastern Pennsylvania. There was one point I think at 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon that except for downtown Philadelphia, every single station in Eastern Pennsylvania either had moderate or heavy snow going on. So as you see, I mean, I had 4 inches or more with pockets of 6. That's probably going to work out fine for those areas inland. But my 4 inch line was just too far south and east. It needed to be north of New York City, and the 2 inch line probably needs to be a little bit further north as well. So you know what? You learn from all of these and every experience. In every experience, there's you're never going to get it 100%, but I certainly could have done better with this than what I did.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's rare that you get exactly what your
I
forecast.
thought you were going to say you're absolutely right. You could have done better with this.
No, I think as I said off camera in a little message that you and I shared on Facebook Messenger, I think we did fairly well. We certainly did a lot better than a lot of the forecasts that I heard about. And last night, and I think this was what generated a bevy of pings on my messenger, people sending me messages. There was one forecaster last night who had suggested that where I live, here in western Putnam County, I was going to get 12 plus inches of
That
snow.
was never going to happen.
And
That
I
was
said,
never on the table. We did not once did we talk, not once in any discussion leading into this did we ever even remotely mention double digit numbers. It was never going to happen. It was not part of the equation. Anybody who came away from this show thinking that they were going to get a foot of snow is delusional. It just never was
uh,
going to happen.
Rich Rothmansky, no. No, it was not Lonnie Quinn who said that. However, Rich Rothmansky, I will say that the person who did step forward in front of the camera and issue that forecast was a colleague of yours. And that's what made it even more bizarre.
Ooh,
So I'm not mentioning
ooh.
any names, but if you were watching last night, flicking around doing shopping, forecast shopping, you know what, and you never put 12 plus inches out unless you're absolutely certain or absolutely sure. That is a number that, like, should I or shouldn't I? So maybe this person was rolling that. Maybe this person didn't even do the forecast. He had maybe somebody uh, who did it for him. That might be a good explanation, as Ricky Ricardo would say, a logical explanation for what I saw last night. But it generated all of a sudden. I'm getting on Facebook, Joe. He said, "How come you're not going as high as any of the other guys I'm watching on TV?" Well, I didn't go as high as all the others because I don't care what the others say. I do my own forecasts, as I'm sure you have the same logic. So,
I never watch. I never watched when I was there. I never watch now. I have no desire. I could care less what anybody does. That's why I get such a kick out of people when I don't really get it too much, but because said it enough times that most people know better. How come you're saying this and so is saying that? Because I don't tolerate forecast shopping on on any of my platforms. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just don't even bother. I honestly, I don't care. Although if I find out about it afterwards and it's a real gaffe, I do get a laugh out of it. Joe S, not to be confused with Joe C or Joe R, has hit the super chat tip jar. And thank you for the kind words. Yes, we forecast here, we don't wish cast. There's enough wish casting channels that you can go to. Um, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting weird things are coming up on the chat board on my end. So I don't know. I'm getting something from admin team support is putting up stuff. I have no idea if that's like really YouTube or not. Oh, now the message has been retracted. Okay, so I'm not sure what that is. So, but thank you anyway, Joe S. All right, you got the screen anyway, so go ahead and do the radars. And when you're switching from radar to radar, when you're switching, I will interject with some surface observations if I can find them. Because, of
Okay.
course, at 7 o'clock, the observation part of the Weather Service website went down. So I'll do the best I can.
All right.
It's
Well, let me just enlarge this a little bit so it'll come up a little bit better on all of your screens. The first radar of the night is from right here in New York. Well, actually, the New York radar is out in eastern Long Island at Upton, New York. But in any case, where you happen to see green, and there are also flashes of yellow. My
Oh, by the way, there were thunderstorms in New Jersey between 5 and 6 o'clock.
The
Uh,
way that the way the FGen contours were so tightly packed together, that would not be a surprise. That it
no, there was
generates.
definitely lightning and thunder. I saw several reports of lightning and thunder.
Okay, well, the yellows seem to indicate moderate to possibly heavy activity. The green is light to moderate, and the blues are just plain light. And as you can see, as we progress through this 3 hour radar, the greens are, well, first of all, the yellows are diminishing, at least over Long Island and up into southern New England. There's still quite a bit of green, but even the green now is starting to peter down or peter off. And you can see almost the back edge of the steady stuff again over eastern Pennsylvania and western New Jersey. In any case, the FGen, the vertical velocities, the omega, depending upon what you were looking at, that's where you would see the most intense activity. Everything was pointing to 6, 7, 8 o'clock as the time when everything was going to be coming down the hardest in the immediate New York City metropolitan area. And that pretty much is the signal right there on the radar. You can see a lot of this activity is indeed happening at its most intense rate. Now, the thing is, it's moving so quickly. As I said, it's rolling along at like 40 or 50 miles an hour to the east northeast. By the time we get to 9 or 10 o'clock, a lot of this steady, heavy stuff is going to be out of here. And all we're going to be dealing with then is just light snow or maybe just some spotty snow shower and flurry activity. And by midnight, it is absolutely all over. So your big snowstorm, folks, is in its final stages. It's coming down the home stretch. Let's go to a different radar and show you
All right, so
somewhat.
while you're switching, at least as of 7 o'clock, we had moderate snow at Teterboro and 30 degrees there, half a mile visibility. Newark was 1 mile, so a steady light snow there at 31. The other stations reporting snow did not report visibility restrictions, so it's all light stuff. On Long Island, there were light snow at all the stations, with the exception for West Hampton and East Hampton, where it's moderate rain at both those places. Temperatures central Suffolk westward are generally in the low 30s. Everybody's now beginning to crack the freezing mark. In the Hudson Valley, light snow, a steady, almost moderate snow at White Plains, 3/4 there on the visibility, 3/4 at Albany, 22 degrees up in Albany. Montgomery, light snow and 27. A lot of these stations, Newburgh, Montgomery, They were moderate snow for several hours. In New Jersey, everybody's got light snow now, except for Teterboro, which is moderate. Also, I'm sorry, and Trenton is also moderate. Three quarters at Tom's River. This should make Alan Casper happy. He was getting a tin cup out for the ice pellets and the snowflakes. Belmar, 1 mile in light snow. Linden, 1 mile in light snow. In Connecticut, we've got moderate snow at Bradley and Hartford. We have light snow being reported at the other stations. Chester, Connecticut, 1 mile visibility there. Raining in Providence, raining in Block Island, raining in Westerly, raining in Boston, moderate rain there. Snowing in Worcester, Westfield, Provincetown. Westfield, Provincetown is also raining. Okay, I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
That's okay. That's just perfectly fine. I even saw some reports that some were talking about the possibility of 6 or more inches out on eastern Long Island, and I'm saying to myself, really, is that actually going to be possible with all of the mixing, or even the hope that it's going to change over from rain over to a fluffy snow? I really, I'm trying to gauge what went into some of the forecasts. I can only tell you the most simplistic way that I look at. Sometimes the simplest explanation is by far the best. I mean, I looked at the NAM FOOS, the tabular data, Joe, yesterday and the day before, and I said, okay, all right, the biggest pop will be centered right on 7 p.m. Sunday. Let's go 3 hours either way, from 4 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. If we average a half an inch to 1 inch per hour, then that gives you 3 to 6 inches. And that pretty much is what, the general snowfall total should have been made into. And then, of course, you have to take into account places that started off as rain or had wet snow that initially did not stick to the pavement or did not stick to most places. You had to wait a little while for intensity to pick in and cause the snow to begin to accumulate. Places to the north that had a fluffy or puppy snow might have had a little bit more than 3 to 6. That's basically the whole the way I looked at it, and really didn't see, just like you, I really didn't see any need to change from my original forecast that we posted here on Joe and Joe. Was it on Thursday or Friday? I forgot already. I think it was
Friday.
Friday. I think it was on Friday. I didn't see any need to do a new map with the map that I had put up on Friday. So there you go. So you can argue with me or you can do whatever you want, but that's the way I felt. Now, this is Philadelphia, and as you can see, here comes the back edge of the snow moving now through eastern Pennsylvania, and it's moving at a pretty good clip to the east-northeast. The green, again, seems to be the light to moderate snow, but again, this is where it should be. It should be right about over the tri-state area, the immediate tri-state area. That's where the forecast for the biggest pop, so to speak, was indicating, and that is what is happening. And at the rate of speed, all of this that you see here, all of this green, this light to moderate stuff, that's putting down maybe about a half to at most 3/4 of an inch an hour, and I'm really stretching it there by being maybe overly generous by saying that. In any case, all of that is going to be gone by 9 or 10 o'clock at the latest in the immediate tri-state area. And then whatever's left after 9 or 10 o'clock will be just spotty light snow. That'll continue until midnight. And believe it or not, the skies are going to start to clear in the hours after, let's say, 1 or 2 in the morning. If you're out and about between midnight and dawn, you'll probably be able to see the stars. You'll probably be able to see that waning gibbous moon, because the skies will, as I said, start to clear out in the after midnight hours. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, it should be a bright, sunny day. It will not be a bright and sunny day for the entire day. There will be some cloud cover coming back in by midday and afternoon, but at least the day will kick off and start out bright and sunny. Let's go to another. Let's go up to Boston and see how the radar looks up there. Now, as Joe mentioned, raining at TF Green Providence Airport, raining in Boston. You can see all the good stuff is now pretty much from overhead in the tri-state area and points north and east. The light to moderate activity, you see those flashes of yellow indicating moderate to heavy over southeastern Massachusetts, Cape Cod, the islands, but all of that is rain for the most part, not snow. And you can see some of the light to moderate activity working its way now up through southern Vermont and into southern sections of New Hampshire and extreme southern sections of Maine. We go, let's say, to Albany. Albany, as Joe mentioned, was going pretty good for a while earlier on in the day. Albany now, as you can see, has the light to moderate stuff over them. But even there, all of that activity is beginning to diminish noticeably, especially in the last few frames of the loop. And again, moving on that northeasterly trajectory, here's the back edge moving past Binghamton, and eventually, again, by later this evening, all you'll have left in the capital district of Albany will be just some snow showers and flurry activity. Where else could I go? Let's go down to Washington. I think there's something special happening down there tomorrow. Oh yes, it's an inauguration is going to be happening tomorrow, but they're having it indoors because wind chills are going to be in the teens and single digits, and so they don't want anybody to freeze tomorrow, so they're putting it inside of the nation's capital, inside of the Capitol building. And you could see that things are winding down in Washington, in Baltimore. It will be nothing left there probably by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, even as far west as Garrett County in Maryland, which usually gets the lion's share of heavy snows in Maryland, typically during a storm. There, the snows have all but ended now, and things are drying out down across the Delmarva, Maryland, and even down into South Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, where if you did not get a chance to see that football game between the Rams and the Eagles,
Oh
that
yeah,
was
it was white out,
yeah, unbelievable.
white out.
Any place else you want to go to,
No, I
Joe?
think that pretty well covers it. And there was a lot of debate the last couple of days because everybody was kind of fixated on the Canadian with what the Canadian was doing. And before I continue, Chuck Cardillo, thank you for hitting super chat tonight. He said he has 4.5 inches up there, up in the Catskills at 3,000 feet. So the snowmobilers are happy, and well over a foot on the ground. Keep rubbing it in, Chuck. By the way, uh,
108.
yeah,
Thank you.
I always have to shut up for the bell. By the way, I've had here. Woke up this morning. The temperature was 41. Uh, it, um, it's been falling all day, 24, and I got a coating of snow on the ground. After all my snow cover was finally washed away yesterday, I got another fresh little sugar coating. Now, just going back to what I was about to say with the Canadian, I wanted to bring up here. This is the 21Z surface map plot. Look where the coastal low is. It's way out to the east, and if you recall, or those of you who saw it, the Canadian basically had the low west of Sandy Hook, or right over New York City, practically, and it had rain all the way up to Route 84, and that was just dead wrong. That was never going to happen. The
Jason,
coastal,
sorry to interrupt. Jason Schaefer saying that on the chat board, none of the models did well until midday today. Well, I disagree, Jason. The one model that had constantly placed the storm pretty well to the south and east of where every of the other models were saying was the NAM 12 kilometer. Now, over the span of time, the NAM got a little closer to the coastline, but my overview, in the time frame that we were looking at, and I know that at least a couple of forecasts from the National Weather Service offices were saying NAM is the outlier. In other words, they were putting all of their eggs in the basket of the GFS or even the Canadian model, which actually at one point had a coast hugger. They said, the NAM is too far out to the east.
right?
No, it wasn't. If anything, the GFS, the Canadian, the European, to a lesser degree, the European also had the system pretty well out east.
And actually, Joe, the European, in terms of snow amounts, um, for the areas closer to the coast, did a whole lot better than the. It didn't do well on the inland numbers; it was too low. But it was pretty. It never really showed more than 2 to 4 inches as a total snowfall for all of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. it was only
Right.
half right. And you're right about the NAM. The NAM not only was correct in showing more of an offshore low, but it also was correct in its radar presentation for this afternoon, where it was this sort of, it was very blotchy. And, it wasn't. It was, speckled might be a better word, and then it showed it coming together during the evening hours, but then you're at that position where it's almost, you're running out of time, and that's pretty much what happened here. I mean, you had, the coastal low was not in a bad spot. You had northeast winds, but you also had some of the energy from the upper trough that's bringing down the Arctic air that was too far. In some instances, it was, sometimes it's too close to you, and you get that coast hugger. This was maybe a little bit too far west, so that the coastal low was never really able to organize fast enough. Now you're starting to see the radar echoes getting, improving, and filling in, but uh, during this afternoon, it was just a disjointed mess.
And on the Nam Foos, and again, I highly recommend to a lot of people. You should try to look that up on social media or on the internet. Just type in on Google Nam FOUS. That's the tabular version of the numerical version of what you see if you're looking at the maps and the charts. But the tabular version is most interesting because if you can learn how to read it properly, you can get a lot out of it. I noticed this morning on the 12Z run of the Foos, Joe, that as of 7 a.m., the NAM was predicting the lowest level, the R1 level, with a relative humidity of something like 62%, and didn't really bring it up to about 76 or 77% until 6 hours later at 1 o'clock. So I said to myself, that's still not quite moist enough. I've always in my mind said that you have to get the R1, the low layer of the atmosphere, the last 35 millibars, saturated to at least a relative humidity of 80% for the precipitation to work its way all the way down to the surface level. And interestingly, at about I was walking my dog at about 11:30, and I noticed as I was walking him, there were like 3 or 4 flakes. I mean, like that was it. And I said, it's trying to get down here, but the air is still too dry. I was saying to myself, it should be maybe around 2 or 3 o'clock before we finally get into a steady light snow when it finally moistens up enough. And sure enough, at about 2 o'clock, more than just a few flakes. I mean, there was quite a few flakes, but it wasn't coming down steady. By 3 o'clock, all of a sudden, and Renata made a note of this, here it comes, steady snow, steady light snow. It took that long for the lower end of the atmosphere to moisten up and then allow that snow to come on down and start doing its thing. So what's a great part about, again, when you learn how to read the foos, is you look at things like that and you're able to tell exactly when you're going to start putting down your accumulating snow. Because, as you point out, you looked at the radar this morning, like at 10, 11, 12 o'clock. Hey, it's snowing. Wait a minute, it's not snowing. There's nothing happening. Virga. It was just coming down through a dry atmosphere and evaporating. We had to wait until the atmosphere finally moistened up. And again, if you looked at the foos, that wasn't happening until sometime after 1 or 2 o'clock today.
I just popped up the wide radar view, and the back edge is now coming out of eastern Pennsylvania, and southern New Jersey. We've got some the darker green echoes over Long Island, so it's probably snowing steadily. I don't have 8 o'clock obs yet, but you can see, a little bit of heavier precip there. You have light snow and some moderate patches up the Hudson Valley, and you're getting a blow up of precipitation now in southeastern New England, and as we mentioned earlier, the moderate rain that is going on in Boston. I do. Let me just take a look here. They probably have a couple of new obs. All right, so it's borderline moderate right now at Farmingdale, 3/4 of a mile. The temperatures dropped to 30. They were 33 last hour, so they dropped 3 degrees in the last hour. And that was by the way, Joe, that was the other thing that was missing in all of this was the fact that if you got the places that got the snow intensity, where they started had temperatures in the mid 30s this morning, quickly dropped to below freezing uh, in Pennsylvania. Okay, that's happening now. It did not, since we didn't get any kind of steady snow falling during the day today. That kept temperatures above freezing for a lot longer than it otherwise should.
Right, and
Down to 1 mile at Islip, 34 there. As I said, 30 in Farmingdale, New York City. Is that LaGuardia? LaGuardia is at 30. They are 1 mile, and so a steady light snow. Kennedy is a half a mile in moderate snow. Vincent Croce, you said that it was snowing hard in Brooklyn. Well, there you have it with the Kennedy Ob. Newark is 1 mile. So you're getting that last, that burst of moderate snow now. So maybe somebody puts down an inch or two with that along the coast. But then you don't have much left to go get through before all of this comes to an end. And by the way, on the wider radar view, as we take a look, the rest of the country is bone dry, but that the Arctic front pushing through Florida, and you can see there's a couple of lines of showers and even a few rumbles of thunder in South Florida, but the rest of the country is quiet, and nothing has developed yet in the Gulf Coast. So this is what the somebody just took paint and just splattered it all over the United States here. So we still have winter storm warnings up. Let me just give this a quick refresh and see if any of them come down. And a few have. We have winter storm warnings up in the Western Carolina mountains, eastern Kentucky, southeastern Kentucky, and West Virginia because we're getting now some of the lake effect stuff that tends to happen that oftentimes works its way down into the central Appalachians. Winter storm warnings are still up in much of Pennsylvania in the southeast and not in the northwest, and those are going to start getting whittled away. We still have them in northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, just about all of New England except northern Maine, and where you don't see winter storm warnings very often. You have winter storm warnings up for except for a couple of counties, and I'm going to double check this around Corpus Christi. I just want to see because they've been overlaying the. Um, okay, so that's further south. So that's down near Brownsville. Corpus Christi actually is under a winter storm warning, and I have affection for Corpus Christi because that was my first on-air TV job was in that market. So we've got winter storm warnings up for just about all of South Texas and Southeast Texas. It includes Houston. I believe it also, Joe, includes yes, it does, San Antonio and Austin under a winter storm warning. New Orleans is under a winter storm warning, as is Baton Rouge and Gulfport. And
amazing.
and they have winter storm watches that extend into South Georgia, across southern Alabama, South Georgia. I don't think they've gone to a warning yet in Alabama, but I'm going to give it a check here. Doesn't look like it. They still have winter storm watches up in southern Alabama, southern Georgia, and then moving their way into, I believe, coastal South Carolina, near Charleston. Let me just make sure. And yes, for Charleston, and then further north up the coast, I believe maybe to Wilmington. Not yet in Wilmington. So, um, I mean, this is really a very unusual setup. And of course, all the light blues, cold weather advisories, the dark blues there, extreme cold weather warnings that are up, including me. I'm in an extreme cold. My forecast low for tomorrow morning is going to be around 7. So that ought to be fun. Although I have been below 0 here. So 7 is small potatoes. But yeah, look, all of this is just all this cold weather. I mean, it's just endless. Everybody from the Rockies east to the East Coast and down to the Gulf Coast. And of course, the big interest is going to be what happens down in the Gulf coastal states. And I have a snowfall forecast map. Joe, they have and this will be the ultimate rub, but I would not at all shock me if Houston winds up getting more snow out of this storm than New York City is getting from the current one. They're forecasting 3 to 5 inches for the Houston area, and they're forecasting anywhere from 1 to 3 inches around New Orleans and 5 or more inches all along the I-10 corridor is going to be shut down. The I-10 corridor, which runs east-west across the lower Gulf coastal states, and then makes its way through Houston, is going to be shut down before this is all said and done. Or at least, if not completely shut down in the Gulf states, it's certainly going to be shut down in parts of it with all of this happening. And the snow area will widen out. Uh, I'm just like at the absolute northern edge of a coating out of this. Atlanta's forecast to get about an inch or so. I don't know. Not so sure how far north this is going to get. I think it's going to be basically from Macon southward that you're going to have snow issues. And they have snow accumulation forecasts of up to a few inches up and down the South and North Carolina coast. Even Cape Hatteras has accumulations being forecast, which is something that you probably see maybe once every 10 or so years.
It's pretty amazing. And in fact, last night on the NAM, using the 10-to-1 ratio, not the other for projection of snowfall totals. Brunswick, Georgia, Joe. I did like a double take when I saw this. Brunswick, Georgia's in the southeast corner, right down by the coast. The NAM was forecasting like 18 inches of snow. I know that, and I said that's obviously not going to happen because there are other factors that you have to put in. But still, the very fact that you're seeing these crazy numbers all across the southeast, along the Gulf Coast, all the way up to Georgia and the Carolinas, is just amazing. Now, I want to say one thing here. You're gonna probably hear somebody by Tuesday or Wednesday say, well, this is just an example of climate change and global warming. To that, I would say, look or check your library or check to see if you can find any of the wonderful books that were written by David Ludlum. I knew David Ludlum personally. He was a great guy, probably the number one weather historian who's written a number of different books. And he has written a couple of books, Early American Winters. I don't have it in front of me, so please don't ask me to quote, but I can tell you that sometime back in the 19th century, there was some kind of a storm system that produced amazingly high snow amounts for places like Louisiana, Alabama, southeastern United States, northern sections of Florida. In fact, I think he referred to it as the Great Southern Storm, Great Southern Winter Storm. Again,
Might have been in 1895, Joe, because I just pulled up something from Google that said that the highest snow in 1895 were this was before there were airport observations. So, I don't know where the source of this is, but they said up to 20 inches of snow fell in Houston.
yeah.
And then
So
and the second highest was 4.4 on Valentine's. Well, now this doesn't make any sense. It says Valentine's Day, February 12th, 1960. So that was Lincoln's birthday, maybe. February 12th, 1960, 4.4 inches
yeah.
of snow. And
You see, these are little quirks. These
yeah,
are things that happen every once in a great while. They're not. They certainly are anomalies, but they don't have any connection whatsoever, at least in this forecaster's opinion, to the warming that we have seen in recent decades or the discussion about climate change. These events do and have transpired in the distant past. And again, if you don't believe me, try and find any one of these books that were written by Ludlum. Again, he was the premier, he was the gold standard of digging up all this stuff on weather history, not just in the immediate Northeast where he lived, but all the way down into the southern states. And again, you pointed out, Joe, I see Jason Fox mentioning 1899, the February Snow King storm of the century. So these were events that occurred in the 19th century.
sure.
And I don't believe that any of the papers and technical discussions about climate change and global warming say that that was happening, that was in effect, um, back in the 19th century. Or as Tex Antoine used to say sometimes on his weather uh, forecasts that he used to do on Channel 7 and here in New York, when he pointed out weather records that took place, either high temperature records or low temperature records or snowstorms or whatever. He often said if they dated back to like 1880 or 1890 or whatever, he said, before the industrial era or before steam engines started taking over. So it has happened. It can happen. It will be happening again. It's just an unusual anomaly that sometimes once in a great while takes place, and it's going to happen again, obviously, in the next 48 to 72 hours.
Yes, and one other one I'll throw out there, San Antonio. And I remember this because I was in Corpus Christi in 1983, and 2 years later, when I was in New Orleans, I remember this well. That when it was happening, seeing it on models and watching it, play out with observations. So this was January 12th, 1985. 13.2 inches fell in San Antonio. So as Joe said, stuff happens. To use a different sort of S word,
Yes.
WPC precip. Of course, what you're seeing in the Northeast is left of what's left of tonight. So as of 8 o'clock, they were forecasting another quarter of an inch of liquid in New England, except for east to southeastern New England and coastal Maine, another half inch of liquid there, and some of it's rain and some of it's snow. The Gulf Coast storm is forecast to produce a half to three-quarters of an inch of liquid from Houston to New Orleans, and this is, pretty much the zone where some of the heaviest snow could fall, and a quarter to a half an inch running along the Gulf Coast and up through the coastal Carolinas, and you see all the precip that's offshore, so you can get an idea of where this Gulf low is going. It's not coming up the eastern seaboard; it's going well out to the east, and it continues to be mostly dry across much of the rest of the country, particularly in the west, where we're looking at a tenth to a quarter of an inch at most scattered around the Rockies, the Plains, the Southwest, and the Pacific Northwest. So our storm system, and I'm using the 12Z European here, is going out. And now we've got the big Arctic high that is moving in with the bitter cold air, and that goes all the way down into the Gulf states. And you've got a beautiful overrunning setup there in the Gulf with easterly isobars from the Bahamas to Texas. So here's the developing low in the Northwest Gulf that's getting pinched off by the high to the north, and the snow that breaks out moves east across the Gulf states on Tuesday and then into the southeast Tuesday night. Um, the furthest north the snow may get into southeastern Virginia for a very short period of time, and then out it goes. Late this week, we could see low pressure. Another low is going to try to form off the southeast coast, and various runs of the GFS have tried to bring it up the coast for Thursday night and Friday. Today's runs all seem to want to turn it to the northeast because if you look at the upper trough to the west, and I'll put that up there, it's got that positive tilt again. And more importantly, is the fact that even though you've got a really good looking southern shortwave here, it's not lifting up. The north and the south are all disjointed. There's no phasing indicated. So the trough just basically slides to the east rather than lifting northeastward up the coast. So unless it does, something different over the next day or two, yeah, there'll be a storm that'll form off the southeast coast late in the week, but it'll go out to the east. And then we'll probably see a little bit of moderation. Actually, uh, though there will be a moderation in temperatures once that goes out because the core of the Arctic air is going to be pulling away, and then we got another front with a little bit. It just looks basically cold and dry with weak systems coming through over the next 10 days. There's nothing special here showing up on either of the models in the long range, at least for the time being. Now tomorrow we could come in and be talking about snow maps that show 50 inches of snow someplace. But at least for now, the next 10 days or so look to be mostly on the quiet side. So it's cold and dry. Kiss it goodbye.
I had mentioned the book by one of the books. I have many. One of the things I really regret, Joe. I knew David Ludlam personally, and I have a number of. I never once had him either sign the inside of a book or even give him a book plate so I could have his autograph. I think I have one book where he did put an autograph in from him, but this is one of the books. This is Early American Winters, 1821 to 1870, and it contains everything you need to know about crazy winter weather, not just in the Northeast, but across much of the. He's got a whole chapter here about southern winters. And for example, he writes about February 6th, 1831. You're not going to go and get this information from the National Weather Service because they don't have records going back that far because the National Weather Service or the U.S. Weather Bureau didn't exist. But Ludlam did his homework. He dug and found old newspaper clippings and old records. And he gives an example of a great snowstorm that hit Charleston, South Carolina, February 6th, 1831. The uncommon spectacle of a snowstorm was witnessed today by the inhabitants of this city. The snow commenced falling between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, continued without intermission until past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, who talks like that anymore, right? Without intermission until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Augusta, Georgia, 4 inches of snow on February 6th. And you talk about the cold weather, Joe, and of course you are in Georgia. Here is a article about the Great Arctic Outbreak into the South Atlantic states, February 1835, and he speaks here about the entire state of Georgia, the entire state registering temperatures at or below zero. That would include Atlanta, that would include the coastal areas. It's just an amazing book. So again,
Yeah,
if you have
the state record low is 27 degrees below zero.
that amazing,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, to wake up, let's say, on a particular morning and find that everybody in Georgia was at or below zero. Not mind-boggling. But again, if you can find any of these books, maybe you can find them on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Any book that is written by David Ludlam, and especially for weather historians who are interested in way, way back before the records of the U.S. Weather Bureau even go back to, this is the book, or these are the books to find. David Ludlam, a truly amazing weather historian.
All right. So you know what? It's a Sunday night. It's been a long weekend, a long couple of days. We're going to wrap it up uh, for tonight, and we'll of course be back tomorrow night at 7:35. I do want to close the show though by mentioning one of our chat board regulars, and of course the man who produces um, Briller Jeopardy every night, Scott Briller. He has been tirelessly taking care of his mom, who was, of course, getting on in years, and she was a fan of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. She would watch every once in a while and say hello, and we'd get some comments about her, doing triple axles on ice skates and everything else. But she was deteriorating in health, and sadly, she did pass away. So Scott is, our prayers and our sympathies to you for your loss, and we're going to pause Briller Jeopardy for the next week, and when Scott gets back, we'll bring it back too. So we just wanted to let everybody know, and let everybody on the chat board know that Scott's mom did indeed pass away. So again, we extend our condolences and our sympathies, and we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m.
And I can empathize with Scott. I'm very, very sad and sorry to hear about this news, Joe. The first time I heard about it. And it's kind of funny because this is the second anniversary that my mom passed away. She passed away on this date in 2023. She made it to 90 years old, and I know your mom was well up there as well. So
89.
89. So I mean, they all had good long lives. I made the funny comment. I said, how many moms out there have a son who reached mandatory age for Medicare and also reached the retirement age for Social Security, which that tells you right there that I had her for a good number of years, and
Yeah.
it's tough. Scott, we're all very very sorry for your loss, and um, uh, our condolences from here on Joe and Joe.
All right. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a good night.